Hello, my name is David Stones, as you can see on the screen there, perhaps. I wanted to welcome all of you to our annual general meeting of the museum. This is our AGM for 2023, wherein we basically cover the business of 2022. So it's a real pleasure to be discussing this evening our performance during 2022, taking us up right to the present time. We're expecting a pretty good turnout tonight. It was interesting. I think one of the gifts of COVID was the discovery that sometimes a Zoom-based meeting actually gets better attendance than a face-to-face meeting. So we weighed that up in discussion at the board a month ago and decided that it was probably preferable to proceed with an AGM virtually based via the Zoom platform. So that's how we ended up with our format for this evening. John and I are sort of sharing the MC leadership role tonight, with John taking the bulk of it on. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, John, to take us through the key points of the agenda. And here you go, John.
Oh, thanks very much. Thanks very much, David. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. This is a member of the membership of the Stratford Perth Museum, but it's also a meeting that's open to the public, and we're very grateful for those people who have an interest in the museum to attend tonight as well. I will just remind people that our constitution and bylaws says that you must be a member in good standing to make a motion, to second a motion, and to vote. You do not have to be a member, however, to raise questions, and you do not have to be a member in order to provide comment on some of the issues, and there'll be opportunity to do so. So without any, now that we've covered off sort of the housekeeping part of it, I'd like to ask for the membership for approval of the minutes from the 2022 annual general meeting, which were distributed today, not only to the board, but to everyone who requested a link for tonight's meeting. So can I get a mover of the 2022 minutes? Those will be tricky.
Brent Shackleton, I'll move.
Thanks, Brent. And a seconder?
Ron Heichel was seconding.
Thanks, Ron Heichel. Any discussion? Is anyone opposed to the approval of the 2022 minutes? Being none, those are carried. At this point, we'll go to the president and board chair report, which I will say you'll be able to tell was pre-recorded. So David Stones will remain in the top corner of your screen, and you'll also see him in the center of your screen. So Mac, if you'd like to play the president and board chair report. Thank you.
Hello and good evening to you all. It's my pleasure and absolute honor to present my chair's report for 2022 to our loyal and, might I say, extremely loyal membership. 2022 was yet another remarkable year for your Stratford Perth Museum, with many, many operational highlights. And appropriately, I'm going to leave the details of those highlights up to our general manager, John Kastner, to describe a little bit later in the evening in his report. I'd like to focus my comments tonight on just one central theme, one central word, really: resilience. Resilience, a word we hear a lot about these days, generally defined as the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficult circumstances. For this, the museum has done, and it has done in spectacular fashion, managing to not only survive the past 3 years of COVID crisis, but to flourish and to emerge with strong financial health and several new product lines to strengthen further our financial and operational stability. There is, my friends, a lot to celebrate here, and celebrate we absolutely should. Your museum finishes fiscal 2022 with a close to 25% surplus on a $533,000 budget. And this after a top up to our capital fund, which currently sits at $55,000, which I can assure you this evening is more than enough to fund foreseeable physical plant maintenance and upgrade priorities. Additionally, your museum has close to $230,000 in reserves and another $80,000 in our new endowment fund. And that $80,000 is in cash and is in addition to the significant number of planned willed legacy gifts that we have committed to the fund and that we hope to realize in the years ahead. And all this wonderful performance, I have to remind, is after being closed from January to May of 2022. And at that point, your museum was closed for 55 of the previous 92 weeks. Some will suggest, quite correctly, that a lot of this is due to enhanced government programs and COVID relief strategies directed at the arts, culture, and tourism sectors. I don't argue with that, but let's be clear. These grant affirmations do not come easily. Your museum gratefully benefits from a progressive and rolling 10-year funding agreement with the county and the city of Stratford, which provides 40% of our required funding. But doing the simple math, this leaves some 60% to be generated independently through the skill, commitment, and hard work of the museum staff and volunteer base. There are three core drivers in optimizing grant application success, and your museum has excelled in all three of these critical areas. First of all, diligence and perseverance are paramount in research and understanding what grants are available, when, for what purpose, and under what conditions. If organizations don't know what's out there, they don't even get out of the starting blocks. John Kastner and his staff team have done a great job in ensuring the museum is astutely aware of the very active grant environment and available grant opportunities. Secondly, creativity, networking, and risk-taking are key to the development of eventful, compelling, on-target grant proposals that command attention. Projects such as the Players Backstage Theater and Culture Cabs are the result of staff inventiveness, well-crafted proposals, and the board of directors that sees the light and is willing to forge new territory. And finally, brand credibility and a positive reputation are, needless to say perhaps, vitally important to grant application success. Most granting organizations now in the arts, culture, and museum-related fields have the highest regard for the Stratford Perth Museum, for its staff, its board, and volunteer leadership team. Our forthright approach to financial management and our absolute commitment to steward and utilize granted funds appropriately is well recognized, fully appreciated, and might I say, applauded. So it perhaps goes without saying that I thank sincerely the staff team led by John Kastner. I thank our board of directors, and I thank our expansive cadre of volunteers for their hard work and successes over this past year. Through resilience, inventiveness, perseverance, and simply working hard, we've endured the pandemic years and now see admission levels not only restored, but even surpassing pre-COVID performance. In closing, I extend a particular thank you to two departing members of the board, Jeff Orr, who gallantly chaired the museum through the bulk of the challenging COVID period, and Ann Bossers, who served as our persistent and, I must say, wonderfully prodding, although always very kindly prodding, board secretary. And in the same spirit, I welcome Leanne Perot and John McIntosh in anticipation of their election to the board of directors this evening. Their respective business skills and experience will be important additions to the board team, and we look forward to working with them over the coming year. Again, I want to say heartiest congratulations to all for a very successful 2022. I know we all look forward to an equally eventful and successful 2023. I hope you have a wonderful AGM this evening, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. We'll pause here if anybody has any questions or comments regarding the chair and president report. Okay, thanks very much. Being none, at this point in the agenda, if you refer to the agenda, this is where we usually have the finance chair's report. Our finance chair is Janice Richardson. I'll turn this back to our chair, David Stones, to give a brief finance report in Janice's absence. David, once again.
Yeah, John,
Yeah,
just before we do that.
Do we need that?
Yes, you go ahead, Mike. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, we need to get that moved, the report.
A motion to accept the
Yeah.
report of the president and chair, John.
Okay, thanks. Looking for a motion for that, please. Doug Kellum and Deanna Horton. Any comments? Concerns? Anyone opposed? Carried. Thanks very much. I'm sort of new to this chairing meeting business here, so thanks for the counsel there. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll need for all the reports as
Right.
we discussed, John, we'll need a motion. Report of the finance chair, treasurer. I wanted to let the membership know this evening, and the board especially, that Janice Richardson has been experiencing some health issues, and unfortunately has not been able to write her brief report and to present it this evening. It's something that John and I are respecting, totally respecting her privacy as she deals with her journey. We're hoping that she can rejoin the board team very shortly, and we're looking forward to that very much. In the meantime, as I say, we're respecting her privacy, and she has, as always, has been very helpful to the point that she can be in helping us through the year-end finances and with a few of the audit questions that came up. Now, I have touched on the central highlights of the year-end financial position, a 25% surplus on a $533,000 budget. So basically revenue, and we're going to hear more about the fine details in the auditor's report to follow. But basically revenue overperformed significantly, and we at the same time were able to largely contain expenses, with the result that we accumulated a significant six-figure surplus, which is excellent and has led to some investment of those surplus funds. So we're in excellent condition, and that's really what the bottom line is about, and we're very proud of that, and very pleased to have that history behind us now. So John, there's no real formal finance report other than that. I suppose we should get a motion, however, just to endorse what has been said, and then move on to the auditor's report.
Thanks, David. A mover? Katie DeBlock, and a seconder?
Brent Shackleton, second.
Brent Jacqueline. Any discussion? Is anyone opposed? I will consider the finance report carried. At this point, I'd like to make reference to the annual report that was distributed. In the annual report, which everyone should have received either as a PDF or as a link, there's a number of reports in there, as well as a summary of our operations from 2023. At this point on the agenda, I'd like to refer to over to Amber Schalk from BDO, who joins us tonight. Amber headed up the auditing team from BDO that audited the museum's financials. And Amber, welcome to the annual general meeting to give a report here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I might be a new face to a lot of you. You're historically probably have seen Rob Lightfoot's face as the partner in charge, and he is on his transition journey to retirement right now. And I have the pleasure of taking over as engagement partner for this year from our Stratford office. So thank you for having me. We performed our audit and issued our statements as you received earlier. I just want to quickly go through what the audit report says and what it actually means. So we issued a qualified opinion on the financial statements. And what that means is basically it's described in more detail in the opinion itself, but there are a couple areas where first with donations, we can't satisfy ourselves from an audit perspective that we've picked up all of the cash donations. It's just something that's not possible and very common in charitable organizations. And the second piece outlines the requirement basically under the Canadian accounting standards that the mortgages referred to have to be disclosed at fair value, which we don't do in the museum statements. And so it outlines there what the differences would be. Also part of our report, we outline, this is something new in the last couple of years, and you probably would have seen it last year if you read through the 3-page report that we issue, but it outlines the various responsibilities of management and the board, and also the auditor's responsibilities in terms of the audit itself. And then it sort of goes over our communication strategy. If there's any concerns we have or anything like that, we communicate them to the board and to management, and also go over any significant audit findings, of which there weren't any this year. The letter's not included with these statements, but we do provide a letter to the board outlining any concerns if we have them. So that's a pretty high level overview of the 3-page audit report that sometimes I think has more words than are useful, but it is what it is. We follow those standards. So we have always issued a qualified audit opinion on the statements. Again, it's very common with not-for-profit and charities organizations. A couple things just to highlight, and Dave did go over them sort of briefly in his president's report, and I'm sure we'll also hear in John's report as well, the couple of highlights for the year. The washroom renovation was one that was a significant capital addition to this year's balance sheet, and nicely it was funded by a grant that was received from the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund. So what happens with grants like that is that they're recognized into revenue not all in the same year, it's over the life of the buildings. So you'll see that come into income over the next few years. The one other thing just to highlight was, and again, Dave kind of commented on this before, the pandemic related subsidies, they have decreased this year, but I also think on the flip side of that, as we start to come out of the pandemic and not having those subsidies, we're also seeing that, you know, that ability to have those fundraising events again, which were quite successful. The innkeepers in you know, it netted over 50,000 in fundraising income this year, which is fantastic. And as Dave did allude to earlier, the surplus position mostly has been retained with the cash and investments. So all of the work that went into sort of rebuilding after that pandemic and the various different programs that were put into place this year all hit the bottom line, went back into cash from the bottom line. So good results for the year. details follow in the statements. I'm happy to answer questions on them. Sometimes they're so detailed, though, that the highlights are usually sufficient, and then I'm happy to take questions afterwards, if there are any, for sure. Also, I just wanted to comment too, we were thrilled, and then again, this was my first year experience as the engagement partner, but the the communication and the turnaround time from John and his team at the museum was fantastic for us. We had a tight turnaround on it, and the communication was great, and we thank John, yourself, and Ruth very much for the cooperation that we had during the audit, because it was a quick one, and it went well. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Amber. It's great working with you, and it was late in the game for us to get started on this, and I appreciate the comfort level you provided for us, leading right up until today, actually,
Yeah.
which right up until the 11th hour, and I appreciate all the work you did.
Thank you.
Is there any questions? We'll field questions here if there are any, and then we'll go to a mover and a second to approve the auditor's report. Questions, anyone? Mac, do you see anybody on page 2 as well?
I don't see any hands up or green hands up.
Okay, so thanks. Being none, I'll look for a mover to approve the auditor's report.
I'll move that, John.
Thanks, David. A seconder, Ron Heichel. Any comments or concerns? Anyone opposed? Being none, the auditor's report is approved. At this point, I'd like to add that it has become the practice of the Stratford Perth Museum in the last couple of years that documents from our annual meeting tonight will be available on our website by noon tomorrow. So those not only include the annual report, which has been distributed, but also the financial report, which was distributed here today in part, but it will be available on our website as well. And we made a decision a couple of years ago for greater transparency and accountability, and also in keeping with the new Ontario Not-for-Profit Act. So that was identified as a good practice. So if anybody who didn't receive the financials today and would like them, you can certainly reach out to the museum through Margaret Jack, who's on our call. You will receive emails from her, and she can get those to you, but they will be available on our website as well. So thanks very much, Amber. Thanks for all your help and assistance. At this point, we'll move to item number 5, which is the appointment of the auditors for 2023. I can say that in my 10 years at the Stratford Perth Museum, we've used BDO for a number of reasons, not to mention the least of which is good governance and good oversight and good practice. The museum here tonight is going to put forward a motion to the membership that we approve Fahm & Company as our auditors for 2023. So I'll be looking to the floor for a motion to approve Fahm & Company for 2023. So Ruth Reith, who is our treasurer, she has made a motion to approve Fahm & Company. A seconder, Deanna Horton. Any comments? Discussion? Has anyone opposed? Being none, Fahm & Company will be approved as the auditor for the 2023 fiscal. Item number 6 in our agenda is amendments to the Constitution. There was none submitted this year, and there was none submitted from the board itself. So item number 6 is covered. Which brings us back to the general manager's report. The earlier phenomena where you saw David Stones in 2 screens will now be replicated, as you'll see John Kastner in 2 screens as well. Mac, over to you. Welcome to the 2023 Annual General Meeting of the Stratford Perth Museum. I'm John Kastner. I'm the General Manager here, and this is the General Manager's report. As we often say, the full report is in the annual report, which has been distributed. But during this period of time, during COVID, we've gone to Zoom meetings. So quite often we also do a video report as well. So first of all, I want to say that the annual general meetings are historically a chance to look back at the previous fiscal year. When we look back at 2022 here at the museum, one of the inescapable facts is that we were closed again. And 2022 was the third year in a row that the museum had an extended closure because of COVID. And I got to say that it's also ironic that tonight is Jeff Orr's last meeting as a board member. And Jeff served as the chairman of the board during those particularly tumultuous times when COVID was really wreaking havoc on society and on the museum as well. I have to say that here, as we sit here now and look in the spring of 2023 and hope springs eternal, that COVID is behind us, one can't help but think about the many times that we were here in the museum, often by ourselves, and the only person in the building during those 55 weeks that the museum was closed over a period of just under 2 years. There's many times that you wondered about the future of the museum. Would it come out of COVID okay? A bit of a fragile existence at one point in our history as well. And there was always lots of concern, what would come out on the other side of COVID if we came out on the other side of COVID. Like so many cultural institutions that were very fearful, and not all survived, and some in our sector as well. So here we are in the spring of 2023, looking back at 2022, and you can't help but marvel and with a sense of relief, and I would argue pride for all of us on this call, whether it be the staff at the museum, our board, our members, our sponsors, our volunteers, our donors, and the people who fund us, the 5 levels of government who have supported the museum so well, that there's a sense of pride that here we are. And not only did we survive, but in many ways, we may have come out of COVID stronger than we went in, which is remarkable. And I don't think any of us thought that on that March Friday in 2020, when Jeff Orr and I went back with a number of phone calls and decided that we were going to close the museum and send all our staff home, having no idea when we would open again or if we'd open again. So we look back at this past 2022, and at a board meeting in December, there was a bit of reflection that took place. It wasn't really part of the agenda, but we looked back at 2022 and said, what have we accomplished in 2022 as we took state of the museum and where we are. And I couldn't help but make what we sort of referred to as sort of a David Letterman top 10 list as to what we accomplished. A number of capital projects were completed in 2022, not the least of which was a $250,000 project to have 5 gender neutral washrooms. In addition to that, we did Act 2 of our Players Backstage project, where we added our own sound equipment, our own chairs, and put some concrete paths in to really mature and bring that outdoor and very important venue into something that's going to really serve this museum as well as the community. In addition to that, we added, as a necessary part of that improvement and the outdoor theaters, we added parking. We did that in conjunction with the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. It's holistic parking in keeping with what we've done before, but one of those champagne problems where all of a sudden we found ourselves where we didn't have enough parking. Peg Dunham, who had served as our manager of programming and education for a number of years, she resigned to take a job in the United States. And we were very successful in an excellent hire in Megan Patterson. Megan is a Perth County native, was working in Alberta, and we were very fortunate to find Megan and hire and entice her to come home and work at the museum. And there's been instant results because of that. And just our programming and our education is really at a high water mark. And that's been a real key to the museum in 2022 as well. As we look to the board, they look to the future of the museum, we can't think about one of the decisions the board made as part of our strategic plan, and that was to create an endowment campaign called Legacy. We introduced that at our innkeeper's dinner. Michaela Fitzsimmons and one of our great volunteers, Rick Mix, they finished off our cooperatives performance space where they curated the west wall of that theater to replicate the inside of the fire hall and to augment our fire department exhibit as well as our Brooks Steam Car exhibit. After almost 2 years of going back and forth, the museum was successful in getting a zoning change. At times that was very concerning. We were not only concerned whether we would be able to do the things we want to do in the future, like our outdoor theater, but even if we were going to be able to continue the things we've done in the past, and that include outdoor activities and fundraisers. Similarly, after a year-long progress, the museum obtained its liquor license so that our outdoor property as well as our indoor theater are both licensed. And that's a key point for us and not only for our partners. During the pandemic, it seems somewhat remarkable, but in 2022, we finished with our 10th straight surplus, which I think is an incredible accomplishment and something we should be equally not only relieved about, but also proud. And finally, for those of you who were at the Arden Park on October the 29th of this year, we had our Innkeeper's Dinner. It's an incredibly important event for the museum. It not only raises a very significant amount of money for the museum, but it's also a coming together not only of the community, but of our supporters. And to have a sold out Innkeeper's Dinner with a record attendance and record revenue, it was terrific. That was the first Innkeeper's Dinner since April of 2019. And we missed that in a number of ways. And it was great to come back to the Arden Park and to have that community that supports the museum all in one room for the first time. Finally, this general manager's report is really a synopsis and a summary of the museum in 2022. But just a personal note, in May of this year, I will have been at the museum for 10 years. And I just want to thank the board, our sponsors, our membership, the people I've worked with, all the people who contribute to the Stratford Perth Museum for making this a great second career. Thanks very much, and we'll return back to the agenda. Thanks, John. That was wonderful. Thanks very much. Nice job. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder of the general manager's report.
I don't think we should approve that report, John. I would move the acceptance of the report, John.
Thank you, sir. And a seconder? Ron Heichel. Thanks very much. Any comments or opposition? Other than the obvious? Anybody opposed? Being none, we'll approve the general manager's report. At this point in the agenda, I'd like to refer to the committee reports. Those are all contained in our annual report, which was distributed. In there, you will find reports about the exhibit, the collection, a volunteer report, which was done by Sue Orr. I'd like to thank Sue, who's on the call, who served admirably as our volunteer chair and as our special events chair for the last number of years. Our special events report is there as well, and our grant report. So I'd be looking for one omnibus motion to approve those reports which appear in the annual report. Doug Kellum, and second by Sue Orr. Is anyone opposed? Okay, being none, we'll approve those reports as published in the annual report. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to David Stones, who headed up as part of the executive committee of the museum, who headed up our nominating committee. So David, for the nominations report.
Right, thank you, John. In effect, the executive committee, which I chair, is the nominating committee for the museum. So as you've heard tonight, Jeff Orr and Ann Bossers, as of this evening, will no longer be serving on the board. Jeff is resigning as of this evening after 4 illustrious years as a director at the museum. So he served a 3-year term and is resigning from the board to pursue other interests and volunteer priorities, I might add. He's resigning after the first year of his second 3-year term. Ann Bossers is not standing for re-election for her second 3-year term. So she served one 3-year term. And again, I think largely because of travel interests and so forth, she's decided not to stand for re-election for her second 3-year term. So that creates, in effect, 2 vacancies, and the nominating committee, and on behalf of the executive committee as well, we're very pleased to present 2 excellent nominees for the board this evening, John McIntosh and Leanne Perot. Their capsule resumes are included in the report that you all received earlier today, and I hope you've had a chance to peruse their excellent qualifications. In addition, there are 2 current members of the board who are completing their first 3-year term. One of them is a guy called David Stones, that's myself, and the other would be Janice Richardson. So the motion I present to the membership this evening, be it resolved that the following slate of nominees be elected to the board of directors. David Stones and Janice Richardson for their second 3-year term, and John McIntosh and Leanne Perot for their first 3-year term. That is the motion I present to the board, and that would complete our full slate of directors, as these individuals would, of course, join the existing and already elected members. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Larry McCabe, second, and David, you moved it, and Larry McCabe second. Okay, any discussion? Is anyone opposed to the approval of the slate? Okay, being none, the slate is approved and the board is in place for the 2023 fiscal year. At this point in time, we always open the floor up, and this will be a bit of a different environment, of course, and don't expect a lot, but I think it is incumbent upon us and also a good idea for to open up the floor for any comments, suggestions, or observations before we conclude the AGM. Any thoughts on the floor, comments, opportunity to discuss anything? Okay, nothing on page 2. I'll take it, Mac, is that correct?
I just have to say, John, this is so different from a gallery board meeting.
So I understand. Yes, I was.
Yeah, I can confirm. there's no
Gratefully, I
hands up.
say gratefully. Yeah.
So, all right, being none, I'd like to, before we look for a motion to terminate the AGM, I would like to thank Mac, who's on our call tonight. He's our technical director for the meeting tonight, and Mac works for Ballinran. A number of years ago, when we decided to go to Zoom meetings, we made the prudent, I would say wise choice to refer the technical aspect of this over to someone in the industry, and Ballinran's done a wonderful job for us, and we appreciate the gift in kind from Ballinran for helping us present this very successful Zoom meeting. And I want to thank everybody's attendance tonight, as well, to come out and your support of the museum, not just tonight, but 365 days a year. That said, I'll look for a motion to terminate the annual general meeting. Mark Yakubuski, I see him down there in the corner. Mark, is that your hand up? Thanks very much, Mark. Great to see you as well. At this point in time, is anybody opposed to the termination meeting? Being none, thanks very much, everybody. Thank you. Good night.